The story begins in Australia with Greg, a Canadian, and Heather, a British girl. Both are tourists who happen to be staying at the same hostel. Today they decide to try the Tucker's Experience, an adventure tour advertised as offering dramatic encounters with sharks. However, they did not book in advance, and now the surrounding area is completely deserted, except for an old man on the boat next to them. His name is Dave, and he seems to be very amused as he tells crazy stories of shark attacks that make the two young people panic. Greg and Heather do not find the jokes funny at all and are about to give up when Tucker appears and introduces himself. He is pleased to learn that they are not a couple. Heather also smiles when the captain flirts with her. Greg apologizes for not booking in advance, explaining that the original plan was to go to the water park, but because of drinking last night, he woke up late this morning. Tucker said it was okay, and asked if no one would know they were here. Heather thought it was a bit strange, but quickly realized it was just a joke, as Tucker explained that they should write a will beforehand because the tour was extremely dangerous. Greg was excited about swimming with sharks, while Heather was a bit nervous. The three of them set off, and Tucker told the story of his childhood shark attack, along with a newspaper article as proof. He also said that the bite didn't itch, even though he had a big scar on his body. When it was time to dive, Greg tried to calm Heather down when she almost gave up when she saw the shark fin coming up. Tucker suggested that they hold hands and close their eyes to meditate, calling it an ancient ritual at sea. While meditating, he started singing the song Baby Shark. Heather laughed with delight and began to relax. The two then went into a metal cage and dived into the sea surrounded by a school of sharks. Heather was once again frightened, but thanks to Greg's presence, she overcame it. Heather now gradually felt the enchanting beauty of the ocean. After the tour, Tucker took them back to the boat. Greg kept thanking them for letting them join the trip. The dream quickly turned into a nightmare when Tucker suddenly pulled out a knife and attacked Greg for no reason and pushed him into the sea, leaving Heather in utter terror. Not far from there was the Gold Coast, where an American girl named Zephyr was surfing. Zephyr then went ashore and went inside a convenience store to buy things. She happened to meet Moses, a guy who was having trouble because his car battery was dead. He needed to find a cable to jump-start the battery but didn't have one. Zephyr went to the parking lot after paying. She poured the water into the trash and took out a tub of ice cream hidden inside a cup to eat, obviously to avoid paying. Soon after, she ran into Moses again and tried to act calm, but he saw everything and hinted that he would report it to the store if she didn't lend him the jumper cables. When Zephyr reacted angrily, Moses changed his tune and explained that he had walked a long way in the sun but couldn't find any anywhere. Moses then asked Zephyr for a ride back to his car. On the way, they talked a bit and we learned that Moses was a real estate agent. Despite a rough start and contrasting styles, the two gradually became closer through their shared passion for surfing. They even discovered that their music tastes overlapped. Eventually, Zephyr opened up and gave Moses a chance and they spent the night together. However, while Moses developed a deep affection and tried to cook for her, Zephyr was not in the habit of sticking with anyone. She left when breakfast was ready. It was only when she pulled into the beach that Zephyr realized she had left her fin key, a small, hexagonal tool used to remove and install fins from surfboards, at Moses's house. Seeing a van parked nearby, she went over to find a fin key that would work and return it later. She was surprised when the owner returned, and it was Tucker. He offered her a fin key, saying he had plenty, and complimented her on her courage to surf alone so early in the morning. Zephyr replied that he was also alone, thanked him, and went back to adjusting the board. Moses then sent her a picture of the meal he had prepared, asking if he could go surfing with her. Zephyr initially typed yes, but then changed her mind and responded somewhat coldly, saying that the ocean was public and anyone could surf. But before she could even see the reply, Tucker suddenly attacked her from behind, put a plastic bag over her head, strangled her until she passed out, injected her with a sedative to keep her from waking up too soon, and taped her mouth shut. He then stuffed Zephyr into a surfboard bag and drove her to the marina. Old Dave's dog started barking loudly as soon as he arrived, but Tucker only gave the dog a threatening glance before taking Zephyr into the boat's hold. Meanwhile, Moses has not given up hope of conquering Zephyr. He finds her van parked near the beach and calls her, unaware that Zephyr has been kidnapped. The girl wakes up a while later with duct tape over her mouth and her wrists cuffed to the bed. Panicking, she rips the tape off her mouth and then sees a girl also cuffed in the bed next to her. It is Heather. Heather explains that they are being held in a small compartment on Tucker's boat and reveals that she has been locked here for a while. Hearing this, Zephyr becomes even more panicked and screams for help. But Heather bursts into tears and insists that no one can hear them. Indeed, Tucker's boat is now in the middle of the sea, with no other boats nearby. The place where they are being held is part of a warehouse. Heather sees hope when she realizes that Zephyr has skills that can help them escape, and together they search for sharp objects to open the cuffs. Although motivated by Zephyr's strength, she was still shocked to see another woman's name written in the corner of the wall, a sign that they were not the first victims and that the previous ones might not have escaped. While Tucker calmly fished on the deck, Zephyr asked Heather if anyone was looking for her, and the answer was not very hopeful. When Heather asked again, Zephyr also replied that no one remembered her, unaware that Moses was still thinking about her when he saw the van being towed away. Knowing that it was Zephyr's place of residence, Moses had a bad feeling and immediately went to the police station. But when he heard that the girl was a nomadic surfer and Moses had only known her for less than a day, and did not even know Zephyr's last name, the police only asked a few formalities to fill out the report. Back at Zephyr, she kicked the bed frame repeatedly to try to free herself. Heather lamented that she did not listen to her mother. She had once prevented her from taking a year off to travel because she was afraid of the terrible things that could happen to her daughter traveling alone. Not to mention that this trip would delay her plans for graduation, career and marriage. Zephyr still maintained her perspective on life, saying that life suited Heather's mother, not her. Everyone had to pursue their own path. Heather asked about Zephyr's family, and she shared that she grew up in an orphanage in the US until she decided to go far away. While talking, Zephyr noticed the underwire of Heather's bikini top. She immediately took it off to get the metal bar inside. Zephyr started to pick the lock when at that moment footsteps approached, forcing her to hide the metal bar. Tucker walked in with food for the hostages. Heather hesitated between drinking water to quench her thirst or sticking to the plan, because if he realized she was shirtless, it might cause trouble. In the end, thirst won. Zephyr immediately tried to distract Tucker by giving him a defiant order for food. He took the bait and began to preach the story of the predator, claiming that there was only one leader on this boat. As soon as he left, Zephyr gave Heather her shirt and hurriedly opened the handcuffs. But she suddenly broke out in a cold sweat and felt dizzy. When Heather collapsed, Zephyr realized there was sleeping pills in the water. Tucker immediately returned to take the metal bar and waited for Zephyr to pass out. She woke up handcuffed to a chair on the deck. In front of her was Heather hanging from a crane. While Tucker prepared the camera, he began to lecture again, this time about sharks, the most powerful creatures on the planet. He cut a lock of Heather's hair and controlled the crane to lift her to the surface. Zephyr was horrified to realize that he was going to throw Heather to the sharks. Heather screamed and struggled as the crane slowly lowered to the surface of the sea so Tucker could capture the whole scene. At that moment, a shark jumped up and bit. Tucker did not forget to record the entire gruesome scene of the girl being savagely bitten and even recorded Zephyr's terrified reaction in the video. When she was brought back below deck, Zephyr discovered more names written under the old paint on the walls. Tucker celebrated his madness with a sick dance and carefully placed the hair and the tape in a cabinet already filled with files from previous hostages. He taped Zephyr's name to the card, ready for the next sacrifice. The next day, Heather's head was far from the ship. Moses's mind was still on Zephyr, especially when he found part of her plank washed up by the waves. When Tucker brought down his meal, Zephyr angrily kicked the tray away and told him to look in the mirror because he looked more like a worm or ocean scum than a shark. Despite his anger, Tucker tried to keep calm, only making a sarcastic remark about the toilet bucket as a reminder that she was the one to be ashamed of. He didn't expect that it was this remark that would give Zephyr an idea. Once alone, she began disassembling the bucket to use a piece of the handle as a weapon. On the deck, Tucker ate while watching Heather's murder and prepared the next injection. He went back down, saw Zephyr sleeping and giving her a sleeping injection. Suddenly, the girl stabbed him in the neck and quickly grabbed the keys. Thanks to that, Zephyr was able to remove the handcuffs. She tried to take Tucker's knife, but suddenly he woke up. Zephyr rushed out and ran up the stairs. Tucker quickly caught up and injected the sleeping shot into her leg. In her daze, Zephyr still managed to kick him in the face, causing him to fall. She escaped to the upper floor and tried to contact the radio. Dizzy, her vision blurred, Zephyr looked out the window and saw a boat nearby. She tried to wave and scream for help, but the music from the party on the other boat drowned her voice. Tucker appeared again, laughing when he saw her raise the tripod as if to attack. Knowing she had no strength left, he just laughed, and Zephyr threw the camera straight into the sea and then dove below. Zephyr was unconscious and slowly sinking when Tucker used a hook to pull her back. Still worried about Zephyr's disappearance, Moses used an app that had access to security cameras along the coast and found a tow truck passing right behind her van. Thinking the driver might know something, he zoomed in on the logo on the car door and found it was the phone number for the Tucker Experience service. Moses called but no one answered. He had no choice but to leave a voicemail. At the same time, Tucker returned to the marina to buy another camera. Dave was surprised to see him return earlier than usual. He said there was a group of rich people interested in the experience tour, expecting a lot of tips, and hoped Tucker would give him a small commission. However, he didn't care, acting like he was in a hurry. Moses also arrived at the marina, and thanks to the traffic in town being congested, he had more opportunity to check around. Besides, Tucker was attracted by a beautiful young female tourist passing by. His target was always tourists traveling alone, because that way no one would look for them for a while. Moses got off the boat and was rummaging around when he heard a banging sound coming from the side of the boat. He followed it and tried to get to the source of the sound. Moses finally found Zephyr handcuffed to the bed. She urged him to call the police and find something to open the handcuffs. Moses was on the stairs while calling the police and was attacked by Tucker. Someone answered the phone, but Tucker was unable to give him any information. Tucker grabbed the phone and threw it away, furious that a stranger had broken into his boat. Tucker pushed Moses against the wall and raised his hook to deliver the finishing blow. But Moses suddenly counterattacked, hitting him with his bag and quickly turned the tables. Tucker was almost suffocating when Dave appeared and hit Moses on the head with the oar to rescue Tucker. However, Zephyr was no longer gagged, and Dave finally heard her scream for help. He began to realize that the situation was more serious than he thought. But before he could understand that he had just made a fatal mistake, Tucker coldly stabbed the old man in the head with a hook. Tucker then bent down to look at the map, plotted the next gruesome route, and locked Moses and Zephyr. Moses apologized for failing to save her and tried to make her open up. Zephyr said that Moses being here to save her was a real hero. At that moment, both of them felt the ship begin to slow down, and just by looking at Zephyr's panicked eyes, Moses knew that the next bad thing was about to happen. Immediately, Tucker appeared in the hold again to pull the two victims out. Zephyr was sedated and was in a state of extreme panic when she woke up on the deck. She saw Moses hanging like heather before, and Dave's body lying on the floor, dismembered. Trying to save Moses, she screamed and told Tucker that Moses was not a tourist but a local. His family had money and they would never stop looking for Moses if he was missing. But all the pleading was in vain. He lifted Moses up to the bow of the boat while the sharks began circling below. In a last-ditch effort, Zephyr begged to be swapped, saying that Moses was a good man and did not deserve to die like this. Tucker scoffed at the romanticism and continued to lower Moses into the water. The sharks were circling close, and the only thing Zephyr could do was tell Moses to stay calm and not move. With all his might, he followed the advice and remained motionless in the sharks' circle, thus avoiding attack. Tucker was furious when the animals left, but he was not done with the show. He pulled Moses back only to stab him a few times. Zephyr screamed in rage at the cowardly act, and the sharks returned as soon as the scent of blood spread out to sea. At that moment, Tucker suddenly stopped the crane and declared a break because of a patrol helicopter flying over the area. He was forced to lock up the hostages. Zephyr, still horrified by Moses's condition, was determined to do everything she could to escape the handcuffs. Tucker came by again shortly after she broke her thumb, and she had to endure the pain until he left. But even so, she was unable to get her hand out of the handcuffs. Left with no other choice, Zephyr committed a terrible act, biting off her thumb. When Tucker returned, he only saw the thumb lying on the bed. Unaware that Zephyr was hiding right behind the door, she immediately broke free, locking Tucker inside and running to the cabin. There, she found the boat anchored near an island. While Tucker struggled to free himself, Zephyr found a flare gun and used it to stop him. But that only slowed him down for a moment. Tucker quickly blocked her way and grabbed her leg. At that moment, Zephyr counterattacked with a pan to his face and stabbed the knife into his hand. Taking the time to jump into the sea, swimming towards the island, Tucker couldn't use the harpoon gun because the distance was too far, so he used a canoe to chase her. There was a party going on the beach, but when Zephyr approached, no one was there. Zephyr was too tired to scream for help, and was finally tackled by Tucker and dragged back to the boat. This time, Moses woke up in the cabin and screamed when he saw Zephyr hanging high in the air while a large shark was approaching. Tucker was excited when he realized it was a great white shark. He lowered the sacrifice into the water with a look of glee. The shark charged, but luckily another one appeared to fight for the food. Thanks to that, Zephyr was still safe. Tucker chased the smaller one away to give the sacrifice to the great white shark. And in the process, he dropped the harpoon gun. Zephyr took the opportunity to use it to free herself from the crane. Tucker didn't care at all and continued filming, knowing that the more the victim struggled and failed, the more interesting it would be to watch. Moses shouted a warning that the great white was back. There was a moment of silence. Then Tucker suddenly broke the silence by scaring Zephyr, causing her to fall into the water. Zephyr, now untethered from the ropes in the water, froze as she saw the large shark approaching. She held her free hand over her bleeding thumb to block out the scent. The great white swam past her and then turned away, completely oblivious to her presence. Tucker continued to watch the beast, oblivious to Zephyr quietly climbing aboard the boat. She slowly approached, took out another harpoon, and signaled Moses to stay quiet until she could get a better position. When Tucker turned back, it was too late. She pulled the trigger and the harpoon lodged itself in his stomach. Tucker fell into the water, groaning in pain as he tried to swim toward the boat. An invisible force from below pulled him down with terrible force. Tucker looked around in despair until the great white shark jumped out of the sea and bit him in a spectacular attack. He only managed to surface one last time to get on camera with his own camera before being swallowed whole. Zephyr breathed a sigh of relief as he sank, but the harpoon rope was still wrapped around her leg, pulling her out of the boat once more. Moses screamed in panic until he passed out, and Zephyr surfaced seconds later next to Tucker's body. The party boat passed by again and Zephyr quickly swam back to find the flare gun. Finally, after much effort, she noticed that the other boat had started to change direction and move towards her. Zephyr then rushed down, shaking Moses to wake him up, choking out, "I don't want to be alone anymore." The movie ends here. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.